don't know those movies? Ask me about elevated horror. Welcome to the Mostly Pod Out at Night. Mostly, I am Graveyard, joined by my co-host Salem.
Hello.
This is episode 86 of our weekly All Things Horror podcast. Prepare to put down the popcorn, turn your brain back on, and ditch those cheesy, unintelligent slasher movies. Whether a slow burn or it takes on a mental illness, we may have to consider what elevated horror is and the new trend. So join us as we discuss the Babadook, Relic, and the Barbarian, and make sure to keep those pinkies up. Yes. We are kind of running out our elevated horror new trend. We did a lot of them covered with what Jenna Ortega's character said in Scream 5. And yeah, like I said, these are fantastic movies. Both of us had seen 2 of the 3 of these easily. I believe Barbarian was in top 5 of our lists of 2022, both of ours.
Yeah, I'm almost positive it was. Yeah, well, I know it was on mine, but I'm pretty sure it was also on yours.
Oh yeah. Like I said, we had pretty much the same list for 2022.
Right.
But yeah, we talked about elevated horror. That seems to be the buzzword of it all at this point in time, and we have thoughts on what people might consider elevated horror. It's not the turn your brain off and just grab popcorn. It's not this mindless kill thing. It's more of a slow burn stuff where really not a lot of deaths for the most part. And a lot of stuff kind of in the backgrounds and heavier topics are discussed. I mean, what's your take on elevated horror, what people think it is?
Yeah, I really think it's just like a slightly more mature way of presenting horror elements. Like I said, I know we talked about this before, but it's basically like, I see it as you take your standard horror movie and then you add drama elements to it. Like, there's a lot of like character development. There's a lot of like backstory. There's a lot of, like stuff like that. There's a lot of like, life happenings and things like that. Whereas a lot of like traditional horror really doesn't get into that. It's you might get like one aspect of a person, but you don't really find out everything about them. I think it's just all of that stuff mixed together, along with like, a slightly abstract and interesting, camera angles and like camera usage, like cinematography. I think that those two things mixed together is what I think people are considering elevated. I think it's just a slightly different way of presenting horror, because like people that are used to your standard horror slasher movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
They see these and they're like, oh wow, there's a lot to this. And I just think that's what it is. It's just mixing 2 genres together, and those genres are not normally seen together. That's kind of what I see it as.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, just because, like I said, in Scream 5, her character goes, oh, I didn't watch those sappy or cheesy stab movies. Ask me about Hereditary and Midsummer and the Babadook, and there's another one. I know you looked it up recently.
I don't remember.
But we had covered all the other previous ones in other episodes. I know that.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, let's get into this with the Babadook from 2014.
Yes.
Yeah. Surprisingly, and somehow we have 2 Australian movies on this list too.
Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, I didn't realize both of these are Australian, but yeah, they definitely are. So
yeah, so we get there's a lot to this, the Babadook, but it's a lot of like haunting type stuff, so I'm not gonna go too heavy into it. But I would say the opening scene is very artsy, right? It's a very dreamlike state where the mother is clearly in a car crash, and the husband dies, and then she's floating and falling, and she goes in the bed, and then she is woken up by her alarm. She has to take her I'll say this the nicest way possible, very annoying son.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's I don't know. Yeah, you can't, there's no good way of putting that. He's like,
yeah,
the first 30 minutes of this movie is kind of difficult to watch.
Yes. Yes, it is. But anyway, she lives in essentially a gray house where everything is gray or black, except for her red carpet in the living room. That's about it. She takes her son to school. He clearly was going into the basement where the dad's things are and building things and kind of breaking things. For being a first grader, that's pretty intuitive and engineering feats. But he's afraid of monsters, all the monsters, all the time. So anyway, he goes to school. She goes to work, where she works at a retirement community in the dementia ward. And just kind of going through it, she meets her coworker who is flat off the back, goes, "Oh, you're in the kitchen, right where you belong." I'm like, oh, so she gets a call like, oh, her son brought like a homemade crossbow.
Yeah, made out of like molding.
Yeah.
Like house molding and
but shooting like darts. Like darts.
Right.
And they keep calling the boy. He has a name. And you can tell that she has like not slept in 7 years, essentially.
Right.
She's kind of out of it. So he gets, kicked out of school, was going to be suspended. She's like, I'll take him out of school. Okay, you can't really do that. She goes, no, I am. I'm sending him somewhere else. All right. And he starts, the seat kicking and just the worst kid screaming in any movie I've ever seen.
Well, yeah, it's also a meme, right? There was the meme why can't you be normal? And then you look in the backseat and the kid's just like screeching. Yeah, that meme is from this
movie. Yeah. So anyway, we meet her next door neighbor who is elderly, and she kind of helps out with and seems to really care about the mother and the kid. And we, I'll say this now, we kind of find out that she seems to be getting into this mood because she was on the way to deliver him when the husband died. So his birthday, which is coming up, is the anniversary of her husband's death. So he's gonna be 7, so he's been dead for 7 years. He's just, very problematic and lashing out and just doesn't know what to do. She doesn't know what to do because she basically can't sleep because, well, he has this fear of monsters and he sleeps with her in just like the most disturbing way either. And I would distance myself from the kid as well if he kept grasping my throat while trying to sleep.
Right.
So that's happening. They kind of read, he picks out a story and they found the Babadook, which is I'd say Gothic era pop-up book. Pretty short, but yeah, he's clearly very afraid of it. He starts with 3 knocks and a loud hiss or something like that. And then you can't do anything to get rid of the Babadook. And of course he can't sleep, so he's crying and she's trying to read him like another story, and that's not happening. But she's very tired and she watches. If you stayed up late enough in the 90s, the sex chat line commercials.
The 976 numbers, yeah.
Yes. I was like, years this movie's supposed to take place in. She has a cell phone. But anyway, and she, starts to be lonely, and well, for some reason she doesn't have locked on her bedroom door, which she should, to say the least. So he has to sleep in there again, and he is, she has to go to work because they overslept. She said, oh, he had a fever, and like, oh, you're gonna stay with your Aunt Claire. Don't talk about the Babadook. It's like, okay. And from the old, yeah, he does.
Yeah, of course, immediately.
And, the cousin starts like screaming and crying and all that stuff. And he still, once again, is a little dick about everything. But he clearly sees the Babadook. And that's kind of like the way we're seeing it. We're seeing it from the mom's point of view, where she doesn't see all these things, right? The kid clearly sees it. And that just kind of goes back and forth while stuff starts happening. She's made some porridge or slop. I don't know what the hell she was supposed to be making that had like bits of glass in it.
It looked like soup. It looked like potato soup.
Maybe. But his didn't have it, so she thinks, oh, he's trying to do something. She put the book away and he's somehow appears again. So she throws it away and then comes back into the house, kind of like a Ouija board. And then she starts at some point she rips up all the pages. It comes back all taped up together and she eventually burns it. Well, so that's getting a little ahead, but that's kind of what's going on there. More weird stuff starts happening. She tries to reason with the Babadook, and there's now more pages in the books. Like, if you don't give me what I want, I'll kill both of you. And shows her squeezing the dog to death and then her stabbing her son. It's like, oh, this ain't good. So she's kind of not going up to work because she's saying, oh, he's sick. And the guy from the work that clearly likes her shows up with a puzzle. He's like, oh, I get this to all my mom gave these to me when I was 6. Like, I'm not 6. Oh yeah, so clearly she's not doing well. She goes to see a doctor. He's like, he needs to see a therapist. In the meantime, here, she begs him for tranquilizers. The doctor gives them to her, and she, so he can sleep. So she actually gets a night's sleep, and she looks immediately better from sleeping for a full night.
Well, sometimes that's all you need, man.
I'm saying that's what. Yeah, that's all she needs. She's just tired. But yeah, so he's taking it, but stuff starts happening, more spooky stuff. She kind of sees shadowy figures and outlines of the Babadook, the hat, and stuff like that. Eventually, she goes to burn the book, and she burns it, and she calls the cops and, hey, someone's broken into my house, someone's making crank calls to me. And then so she eventually sees it, and she does the cardinal sin of hiding under the covers and then looking out from them. So the Babadook goes into her possession style, and she becomes kind of very different. And yeah, so then she's like, okay, I'm going to kill my son, with the voices from the Babadook. She kills the poor dog. And she's ready to, kill her son, but he goes, you're not my mom, and does a Kevin McAllister Lone Trap styles. It does very good for himself for being 7. Also should point out that he had a birthday party at the cousin's house where it's all girls and a princess party. The mom freaks out because they're talking about her. It's like, oh, I know what it's like to have lost. I don't go to the gym. And she just snaps. And her son pushes his cousin out of the treehouse like, your dad's dead. Your dad's dead. And I don't blame the kid for being angry about that.
Well, but at this point, the kid has, pushed so far that no one is going to listen to what he's saying.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I mixed up a little bit. Yeah, essentially he fights her off, stabs her, she pukes up, bile, and she kind of makes a deal because you can't get rid of the Babadook. So it ends up they keep it in the basement, and she has to feed it like dirt and worms. And she's like, and the son goes, when can I see it? And she goes, when you're older. End of movie. Now I know this was a first watch for both of us. I'll kind of go my first thoughts here. I have heard a lot about this movie, and about 10 years it's been out, but I never watched it. For me, it's because the wife thought it was gonna be too scary. It would mess with her too much because she doesn't like that paranormal, shadowy stuff. Because that's what scares her. And a lot of people say, oh, this isn't, about mental illness. I think it's about depression. And that her, the Babadook is her inner depression that she can never get rid of. So it's always there waiting potentially to come back. And that, it is genetic for them somewhat. And that's why her son will see it when he becomes an adult, is because he will also suffer from depression. That's my take on it. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it might be a little more than depression. I think it's just her overall mental state, you know what I mean? Like the kind
Hmm.
of desperation that she's feeling because she's doing all this by herself. We found out that, she used to write, she doesn't write anymore. Now she just works in like like a care facility, which she hates. Like her boss is mean.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? It's just a bad situation that she's in, and because she's a single mother, she can't do anything about it. Because her son is a problem child, she lost like all her friends. Like even her sister is like barely on speaking terms with her. Like it's
Right.
everything is bad, right? Everything is bad. I think it's just an all encompassing like mental breakdown. And I
Right.
think that yeah, she fights the mental breakdown and eventually does win over it and feels better. But there's always that danger of it possibly coming back. So
Right.
yeah, I think that's what the basement part of it is.
Yeah. I mean, and for first thoughts, I don't know why this took me so long to watch. I mean, it was talked about, I feel like, a lot when it came out. And the wife watched it with me this time, and she's like, "Oh, this wasn't, you know, as bad as she thought it was going to be." And I go, "That's good, Babadook." She goes, "No, stop it." I'm like, "Okay." But no, I thought it was a well put together movie, and it definitely feels, the quote elevated horror esque, right? It's a slow burn. The dog dies,
Of
and
course.
maybe the next door neighbor. They never really confirmed that when she opened the door.
Uh I don't think she died.
I mean, what
Who
was your
knows?
overall first thoughts of this though, as a movie?
I mean, it was good. I mean, I I had heard of it before. I really didn't have a whole lot of interest in watching it,
Hmm.
because I knew it was like a mom and child horror movie, and those horror movies I really don't like. I mean, they really hit. It seems like they hit a thread for people with children. Like
Hmm.
they're fearing for their children, and me since I don't have children, they don't really hit with me. Most of the time, they're just like annoying. Just like they're overprotective of these children. They do stupid shit with these children. It just those movies overall really don't appeal to me. So because I knew that's what it was, I just kind of avoided it. Since it was brought up as being, like we said, quote unquote, elevated horror, it kind of piqued my interest a little more to watch it. Is there like what could possibly be elevated about this movie?
Right.
So it's been on my short list for a while. And now I've watched it, and I mean, I think I was kind of correct in my original judgment. I mean, it's not a bad movie. Don't get me wrong; it's well made. I think it really hinges on the mother child parent relationship, you know,
Right.
and like if you don't really care about that, there's not a lot of stuff, to keep me interested, to keep me like invested.
Right.
But again, it's not that long. It doesn't overstay its welcome. A lot of these movies will pad out their run times. It doesn't. It's like an hour and 30 minutes. I mean, it's in standard movie length. It doesn't try to drag the shit out. So it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's overall it's good.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I'll kind of go into my highlights then. I mean, atmospherically, it looks great. Everything's so drab and dreary, and that's kind of in um the layout of her house, right? Everything else outside of her house, other people's houses are bright and colored. And she lives in that, like, I'd say Tim Burton esque house for coloring. And
Yeah, I mean, it's just an old house that's not really well taken care of. That's
right,
that's all.
right. Like I said, I do enjoy that though. Atmospherically, it looks great. I like the house too, just overall. Like, I would love the layout. Um, and the Babadook itself, you don't necessarily get like always like the full on pictures, always a little bit different kind of every time you see him, I feel. And it's nice that they kind of took in this different lore. I don't think this was based on anything before. I don't recall. I didn't do that too much. I didn't do too much research into it.
I have no idea.
But I mean, there's just a little bit of lore, and it wasn't an over explanation of the creature, of the Babadook itself. And I do appreciate that, because as we discussed, sometimes there's too much lore, there's too much stuff revealed. And I think they did a good job portraying her kind of insanity. She just looks tired all the time.
Right.
But yeah, those are my highlights. How about you?
Highlights. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, like you talked, like her kind of descent into like despair. Like you could really see, like she is. Yeah, she's in a bad place. And again, acting wise, it's fantastic, and also like the way that they're portraying it, also very good in showing like how bad this despair and depression is. It's a rough life, and it just keeps getting worse.
Right.
I mean, the way that it's presented, I mean, the cinematography is great. Some of the shots are just interesting and strange, just kind of like for no reason, but that's okay. I mean, especially in a kind of subject matter like this, that's okay. The weapons that the kid made, I thought were pretty interesting looking. They were like, like you said, he made like a crossbow out of like, baseboard molding and like, looks like wire and like darts and stuff. He had like a weird contraption that like threw balls that was like
bocce balls.
Yeah, exactly. But it was like a weird, like old timey, almost like steampunk looking contraption. That it was like a backpack, which again, they're just interesting looking. And of course the dog was great. Bugsy. Bugsy or Mugsy. It was one of the two.
Yeah.
The dog was cool. I mean, until it wasn't, but it's
right.
It's a good little dog.
Yes.
You want me to go into my low points here?
Roll into your low points. I think I know two of them.
Yeah, the kid, man.
Yes.
I mean, I'll give him this. His acting is not nearly as bad as a lot of the other child actors out there.
Right.
It is just like, I understand that you're trying to like show how annoying and different this kid is, but holy shit, dude. The first 30 minutes of this movie are rough to get
Yes.
through. It is like, I just want to like shut it off. It is like screaming child and like desperate, like, crying mother, like for 30 minutes. And it's like, this is too much. This needs to stop. Her sister sucks. I know that we're seeing her at the end of the 7-year cycle here, right? So like she's probably real tired of her bullshit by now, and I understand that. But like still, she still sucks.
Yes.
This is not nice. There's a scene where there's a hole behind the fridge and there's all these freaking roaches coming out of it, which was completely unnecessary and disgusting. I did not like that. But yeah, like I said, that the beginning, that first 30 minutes is really, really rough. And the dog. I don't know why they always have to kill a dog. Like every horror movie has to kill an animal. I don't know why, but they do. That's like a requirement of all horror movies, has to kill some animal that was portrayed as a pet earlier in the film.
Yeah.
Okay, and then another one here is kind of a deep cut. Now, older movies and video games, I will call out one in specific, is that Resident Evil, the very, very first one, the one that had the live action opening scene. You've seen it, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Okay, I don't know if other people have, but whatever. Me and you have both seen it. The sound that the dog makes when it attacks them is the exact same sound that the Babadook makes. They literally took it from like a clip art audio archive.
Yes.
And just pasted it in there. And it's been used in other movies and things. I'm not saying it specifically came from Resident Evil. I'm saying Resident Evil used a generic clip in 1998 Right? Actually, no, it was before 1998. The game took place in 1998. But it was that sound that they picked was then used at least 15 years later
Yes.
in another movie that's supposed to be quote unquote elevated horror, and they couldn't even make their own monster sound.
Mm-hmm.
That's stupid and annoying. So that's it for me. What are you about? Your local.
Oh, for sure. That sound you talked about, I heard it immediately. I'm like, I know the sound. It's like a generic Godzilla roar.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like when you hear it and you're like, what? Like you couldn't do better than that. And they do it more than once. It's like 3 times the same sound.
It's the Wilhelm scream for monsters.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That was what I was thinking. I was like, I'm pretty sure this is the Wilhelm monster.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I heard that. They did it multiple times. Yes. And of course, like I said, the kid, the fucking kid, like it hurts me more because having kids, it just goes into your bones. Like you feel it. Like, God, shut the fuck up.
Right. And I think that's what, I think that's what this movie is going for. It was really trying to hit that like parent demographic, like as a parent, you would really feel this. I mean, I understand it. It just doesn't hit me quite as much because I'm not an actual parent. So
right.
It just really annoys me. And I just want to walk away, which is what I want to do in real life. When a child is screaming, I just want to walk away. Like as a parent and it's your child, you cannot walk away. I understand you have to deal with it. So it's different.
Right. Yeah. And like I will give the kid credit. The second half movie, he wasn't as annoying. So we the wife and I discussed this. Yeah, he actually got better.
Yeah, and again, when the kid is like just doing acting, not that bad.
Right.
Like it was again. I know I call out a lot of children for acting, and people are probably like, "Yeah, they're just kids." Well, yeah, they're just fucking kids. Don't put them in your movie.
Right.
Don't make plot points revolve around fucking children.
Mm-hmm.
Or child acting to sell it. That just drives me crazy. You can have children. Don't rely on them to relay information or emotion.
Right.
But yeah, I get it.
Yeah. And yeah, like I said, the sister was annoying, and like I really, because I didn't know how long this was, the time period of mourning, and we're just going, it's been 7 years. Like it seemed like it just happened because they didn't say that she was pregnant. They hinted at it later out in the movie, but it didn't seem like it. The way she was, it seemed like it just happened, like fairly recently, and that would make sense. And I'm not saying everyone agrees differently. And I can understand that maybe closer to the anniversary date, to the birthday, she goes into more of a depression. I just feel like 7 years might be a very long time for that.
Everybody grieves differently, buddy.
I know.
Can't put a timeline on these things.
Yeah. And yeah, obviously the poor dog getting killed. It was a good dog. It protected the boy. When it knew there was something wrong with the mother, and the dog doesn't deserve to die.
I'm just saying, like every movie, like you said, like this movie doesn't really have any deaths in it, right?
Yeah.
But like even the movies like that, oh yeah, just kill the dog. Like, like how do we get it across that this person has turned evil? Have him kill an animal. That's like every fucking movie does the same thing. I don't. They like there's like a bingo ball of little pieces of paper. Like, what do you do if you turn evil? And every single one of those pieces of paper is kill an animal. It's like they're like, what should we do? Kill an animal. Go.
Yeah. And put fucking locks on your doors. If you're gonna do what she's doing, you need to have locks. If you have a lock to the basement, you can have a lock on your door.
Yeah, but I mean it's a supernatural entity. I don't think it needs the door.
I'm saying from the sun. They're from the sun. When she needs alone time, she can lock the damn door.
The kid can build a crossbow out of crown molding and darts. I'm pretty sure he can get into an old-timey lock.
Yeah. But that's why I got it. So our out ofs for this week are confusing hallways. Well, this one didn't necessarily have it. The other ones do. So how many confusing hallways out of 10 do you give this movie?
Um, I mean, I do like it. Is it a movie I want to watch again? Not really. So I will give it 6.25 confusing
6.25.
hallways out of 10.
Yeah. The first 30 to 40 minutes is rough. It really, really is. And that's what brings it down for me. Like, if it was just the second part, fine. I could do without the kids screaming. I don't need that in my life anymore.
Right.
Is it a perfect movie? No. Is it, will it have hit us harder if we were mothers? Maybe. You know, but I'll give it 7. I'll give it 7 confusing hallways out of 10. It probably would have been higher if not for the screaming kid, but we did get good memes out of it. So, I mean, there's that. And if they use other sound effects for the creature than, Godzilla generic roar.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, why you go through all this like cinematography and all this like acting and selling this thing, and then you use a generic sound? It's like, come on, dude.
Right, because like her floating from the crash down to the bed is, especially the bed part is practical, and that costs money. That a rig that has to happen, but then you have just public domain screams.
Right, it was just bizarrely out of place.
Yeah, that took me out of it briefly. It was making those noises. So, all right. So next up we have Relic, not the Relic, but Relic from 2020. Why don't you go ahead and give us a recap?
Yeah, because if you search for the Relic, you get the movie, the museum monster movie from 1997 with Tom Sizemore.
Yeah, you do.
Which, I mean, I watched that movie. I don't think I was a big fan. I like, you say Relic, and I can see that font for that movie in my head. They had a big marketing push for that movie. Wasn't that good? Anyway, so this is Relic. Came out in 2020. So the movie basically revolves around there's a mom, a daughter, and the grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
Now the grandmother lives on her own. It seems like she's kind of a difficult person to deal with. So like her daughter, I mean, they keep in touch, but it's like, like a once a month kind of keeping in touch type of deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So basically they get a call from, I think it's, no, they get a call from somebody who says they haven't heard from the grandma in a while. Like the neighbors usually see her every other day and they haven't seen her in a while. So you should go and check on her. So the mom and the daughter go to the house to check it out, and she's not there. And they look around the house. They really don't see anything that strange, other than like, there's junk all around. But it seems like that's kind of normal for her. So they're there for like 2 days. They set up like search parties trying to find her. Like looking through the woods, looking around. They can't find her. Um, the mom starts having kind of like weird dreams about the house. There's like a stained glass little window in the front door. And apparently this little stained glass window had come from the original cabin which was on the property before this house was built, that their great grandfather died in. And that was the only thing they saved from that old cabin, was this stained glass thing on the door. They put it in the new door, and she's having a bad dreams about, like, I guess like witnessing the great grandfather dying in the cabin. Like seeing him like die, and then seeing him possibly still alive on the ground, covered in like black mold, but being like desiccated and rotten. It's interesting. It's an interesting presentation, but overall, whatever. It's just kind of weirdness. So after a couple of days, like she wakes up in the morning, goes downstairs, and grandma is there just making tea.
Yep.
And they're like, what the hell? Where were you? Granddaughter, comes running in, gives her a big hug, and they like get back together, and she won't answer where she's been. And, they kind of clean her up. The doctors give her a bill of health, whatever, but they say like, we need to keep an eye on her because we don't know what happened. We don't know if she remembered what happened and she doesn't want to talk about it, or if it's literally like a fugue state thing and they don't know. So yeah, it becomes more and more apparent as they're like hanging around her that she definitely has some form of dementia, Alzheimer's, something, right? She's
Yeah.
showing all the signs to where she can't remember things. She's calling people the wrong name.
Post-it
Um,
notes everywhere.
yeah, she's having like bizarre, weird mood swings. Like, one time, once beginning of the sentence, she's angry at her granddaughter for saying she wants to move in and help her, and at the end, she's happy that she's moving in. It's like it's all over the place. But that's again, this is standard for dementia, Alzheimer's stuff. They're all over the map. So anyway, as they're going along, they find out that the grandmother thinks that something had uh, broken in and like kind of infected the house in some way. And there's a lot of like she's talking to people that aren't there. Again, they witness a lot of weird stuff. The granddaughter finds out from the neighbor, like there was a neighbor boy who used to come and like hang around with her, like a special needs kid that came around and used to hang out with the grandma, and they used to like keep each other company kind of stuff, right? And apparently they were playing hide and seek. Grandma in her paranoia has put like locks on all the doors, like including internal doors. So she was playing hide and seek, put the kid went in the closet to hide, she locked the door, and the kid was in there for hours. Like you could literally see like fingernails scraping on the door for him trying to get out.
Right.
So and they find out that later on the guy had to like the dad had to come to the house and go like, where is he? And she's like, I don't know. I haven't seen him all day. And like he could clearly hear him screaming from upstairs.
Right.
So yeah, so they like kept their distance, but again, it looks like this dementia stuff has been happening for quite a while. So anyway, the granddaughter is, kind of on the fence about moving in to helping her. The mom is like thinking about putting her in an old folks home and then maybe bringing her back to her own home. But in no scenario is she going to be staying there by herself.
Right.
So essentially, as this kind of breaks down, the granddaughter kind of goes in the closet and essentially gets lost in a maze of like uh, constantly shifting, moving hallways and doors.
Yeah.
It's kind of like
With the black mold kind of everywhere.
right, yeah, the black mold and like just weird junk everywhere, stuff like that. It's kind of like I said before, the House of Leaves book with like the weird corridors and stuff inside the house, or the one movie that we watched with
You should have left.
Kevin Bacon. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Like that, where there's like weird hidden doors and like the rooms aren't matching up, kind of thing. It's kind of like that. Like like as she keeps going through it, it's like like hallways are getting smaller and they dead end, and sometimes she has to like break through walls to get into new hallways and stuff. It's like it's bizarre, and she's trapped. She's got no phone service in there, and she's trying to get out. And the mom and the grandma are like, oh, I guess she just went out. Like all her stuff's here, but we can't find her. And so she's trapped, lost inside the house, but they can't hear her and she can't get out. Anyway, so as this is happening, the mom is witnessing the grandma like do weirder stuff. Like she's trying to eat pictures, she's trying to like bury photo albums, and who knows at this point if she's talking about she's trying to hide it so that her dementia can't take it away from her, or if it's the monster, that this unnamed monster in the house that she says. We don't know. It's kind of all over the place because again, she's not all there. So anyway,
Right.
the mom, in helping her, she realizes that the mom is like covered in this like black mold stuff. The same stuff that's in the house all over the place is now on her, like her body like spreading. She gets some on her, but obviously her grandma, the grandma is like infected with it. She's trying to like get her to take a bath. She like, she's like locked herself in the bath. She looks through the window above the door and she can see her like stabbing her own chest,
Yep.
like trying to get like the whatever the stuff off of her skin. And then again, she's like, she's like stabbing herself in the face, whatever. And she ends up going into all of them end up going into the never ending hallways, like looking, because the grandma runs off and the mom has to follow her, and she runs off into the closet that leads to the never ending hallways. And so all of them are in there. The daughter eventually does find a spot that she breaks through the wall and she can actually see into the real house. So she's trying to break her way through the wall. She hears her mom. She goes and gets her mom after, and they have like a confrontation with the grandma where they have to like fight her with a pipe, and kind of knock her out and like break her leg, and like she is messed up. She looks like a zombie at this point. Like she's been severely injured, but still coming. So the daughter, gets pushed out of the hole back into the real front room. The mom's trying to come through, and she gets like kind of pulled back in. Anyway, so they end up, they pull the mom out. She eventually gets out. And the grandma also kind of comes through. They have another little kind of final standoff in the front room to where they finally knock out the grandma, who at this point looks like a corpse.
Yeah.
I mean, she looks very bad. Like her skin is like falling off. The mold is like all over her, whatever. And so they get the door open. The granddaughter runs out, and the mom's like, "I gotta stay with her." So closes the door. Granddaughter can't get back in. And then she gently picks up the grandma, brings her up the upstairs to her room, and then peels the rest of her skin off of her body to reveal like a kind of black, like a black charcoal corpse husk underneath her skin. And then she seems to be at peace after she does this and lays down. The mom lays down, spooning the new charcoal corpse, and then the granddaughter gets back into the house and then lays down and then spoons her mother. And then as she's spooning her mother, she sees that the mother has now been like infected also with the mold. She's got a black mold spot on her back. End of movie.
Yes.
Obviously nothing is really cleared up in this movie. Nothing really comes to an ending. We don't have any fucking clue what happened. But yeah, that's where we're at. So, I mean, first, I've seen this before. It's only my second time watching it, but I have seen it before.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's basically like a detailing metaphor for dementia and Alzheimer's.
Yes.
Of how the person is changing and, losing themselves, and eventually in order to like, for you to come to terms with it, you have to just like accept it, which is, I think, what the charcoal corpse means. Is that it's still a thing that's alive, but it's not what you remember your, mother to be.
Right.
That is my interpretation of it. I don't know what your interpretation of it is.
Oh, my interpretation is it's fully Alzheimer's. The ever changing hallway is, to me, the fact that you don't remember your own house. It seems different, and that's a way of portraying it. Like, it's kind of your house, but it's kind of not. So that realm is them trying to actually fully understanding what the dementia is doing to the grandmother. And I think, her bearing her friends, the fellow album is, she is kind of like forgetting it as well. Right. So it's kind of rotting her mind a little bit too, because she doesn't remember stuff like that. And this is probably my third time seeing this. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely, like I said, Alzheimer's and stuff like that. And, in my head, you see a little bit of the mold or infection, if you will, on the mom. They don't really show outright. It's implied to be it. But I think that's kind of showing that genetically she's going to be predisposed to it as well.
Right. Yeah. The daughter sees, I think that's just the daughter's mind now seeing that she might one day have to do the same thing with her mother.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's supposed to symbolize.
Right. And the great grandfather that died alone in his cabin was, I think, a good metaphor of, you go through it alone. And I mean, it's nothing that really anyone can really experience with you, and he kind of shut himself off so no one else would see him getting to that point.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, to me, it's a clear dementia thing. I know I've read a lot of people saying it's some sort of demon / monster. And I don't think that is.
Yeah,
I
and
think
it
that's the
really doesn't.
metaphor.
Yeah, it doesn't sell that way. I mean, ultimately, it ends up being the grandmother is the monster.
Right.
Yeah, they don't. There's no other monster ever shown in there. The only, I mean, I'll talk about that in a minute. But the only there's like a kind of a dark figure that shows up in the background sometimes,
Mhm.
but it's always when the grandmother is there. So it's like the phantom of what could be is what I
Right.
think is haunting in the background. It's like the elephant in the room kind of thing.
Right.
I think that's what
Yeah.
that means. And then at the end, when she peels her skin off, she becomes the thing that they were worried about before.
Right. Essentially, they're peeling away the mother and grandmother they knew and revealing the new person they have to deal with,
Right.
which is a husk, a shell of the former self.
Right. Right.
That's my interpretation as well as yours. So I don't know where people think there's actually a monster coming from.
Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty to me. It's pretty cut and dry. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you could make. I'm sure people could make me a sale on what else it could be, but to me, it's pretty clear. But
Yeah. Yeah. Why don't you start with your highlights?
sure. I really liked that first dream with the grandfather's like dead body. The way it was
Mhm.
presented and the way that it like they just kind of like fell over and then the body was there and then the body's like opened up its eyes. Then the mold was everywhere. It was interesting. It was like an interesting foreshadowing. But at the time, you're like, what the hell is this? Because it's like at that time, like the grandma isn't even yet like nothing
Right.
weird has happened. It's like this bizarre dream. I mean, I think the way that the mold was done was portrayed interesting. Like it was just a kind of slow descent.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I think the stained glass in the front of the house was basically like the grandmother's state of mind. The
Yeah.
more mold it got, the worse that she got, and it was I think it was well done. Like I said, the Phantom that we talked about before, where it was like, it was around a little bit in the beginning, but as the movie went on, it showed up more and more until I think at the end the grandmother became it,
Right.
which was good. And again, I love the whole like secret impossible rooms and hallways, like being inside of other buildings and like some kind of like supernaturally cross dimensionally like existing in weird
Back
places that they
rooms.
technically
Yeah.
can't be. Right. I love that concept. I really do. And I mean, it's not used super heavily in this movie. I mean, it's an important element for sure. But it's still fun, and I love when movies have that element in it. That's it for me. What about you?
Yeah, the hallways and everything being buried in the back. I portray it that the hallways being the synapses in the brain. These are all the memories that the grandmother's forgetting. You know what I mean? That's why there's junk everywhere, because it keeps getting buried farther and farther back and being affected by the mold, being the dementia or Alzheimer's. I think that was a great metaphor for it. And holy crap, like that charcoal wound, the charcoal bruise, that like it looks so good.
It did. It really did.
Like it almost makes you itchy. Like it's that good, right? And like the sound effects for it, like when she's peeling the skin and just rubbing that, it sounds like you're rubbing like charcoal. And
Right.
like you know exactly what that feels like. Um yeah, the cinematography was amazing. The house was great. And yeah, the stained glass kind of showing, she took it from her father's house, right? Showing that she took, that being the dementia or Alzheimer's, that she took it essentially from the grandfather, and just that line that is like you are seeing your future self as well. And the daughter knowing that her mother is going to end up that way most likely as well.
Well, yeah, and yeah, in her mind, it's just like, oh shit, like this
Right.
might be me in the future. Who knows?
Right. Yeah, and like everything was just fantastic. The special effects, the mold in the house too. And it felt like a cluttered home. And someone, if you know someone that has dealt with Alzheimer's or dementia, you can kind of feel for this movie. Like what that's like if you dealt with it. and for the stranger, the person underneath that you don't know anymore, that doesn't know you.
Right.
And as we discussed before, that is my biggest fear: is my mind going, but my body being fine.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it either. Yeah, I mean that's yeah, that's that's one of my low points. I'll go into that when it's my turn. But
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'll run my low points. It's just that part, right? It is that innate fear that that this movie does give you kind of that sense of dread, and that means it does its job well. But still, that pit in your stomach feeling like I don't want this to happen to me, type deal. And yeah, like the mother potentially being just a dick to begin with, and kind of push her kid away before all this happens. Yeah, I don't like that. And kind of just like when she gave the granddaughter the rings, like, your mother had her shot at marriage.
Well, yeah, I mean, but that was at the time she said it, it was like a playful jab,
Right.
But yeah, but then later on, like she reverses course, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then, does the classic thing where she can't remember where she puts things, so she starts accusing people of stealing it,
Right. Right. And then, the young naivety of someone thinking they can just work at a bar the rest of the month.
I mean, you can work at if it's the right bar, you can work at a bar for a very long time.
Yeah, but that's just not having goals. Like,
I mean, she's fucking young, dude.
Yeah,
you can have a couple of years where you work as a bartender, figuring your shit out. Who cares?
Yeah, but I'm scraping the barrel for these low points, so there's not that much for me. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, again, like I said, the whole dementia Alzheimer's thing just terrifies me. I don't like it. Yeah, I hope I don't have to deal with it on either side. I really don't want to. I mean, I hope I don't, but yeah, it does. That's scary for me. I don't like it. And I would say the old lady's skin. There's a lot of old lady's skin in this movie, both before and after she gets infected. Like there's a lot of naked old lady ass in the beginning of the movie, and then as it goes on, and she's got like wounds and shit, and she's like stabbing herself and pulling and itching, and then just straight up at the end, just like peeling off old lady skin. There's just too much goddamn old lady skin in this movie. Again, whatever. It's a good movie. I'm just saying, I can do it a little less, naked old lady ass. And then the ending. Yeah, of course, I get the ending. I get what you're trying to say, but like, wow, is that an ambiguous ending? It's just like, what the fuck does this mean? And then it just ends.
Well, you don't know if it's it's not even a bad ending. You don't. It's an ending that you don't know.
Yeah. It's like I have no fucking clue what is going on, what is happening. Right. And then like, what the hell? Like, there's all them people like at a search party looking for her, and then all of a sudden they found her, and then nobody gave a shit. Like nobody gave like, well, okay, whatever. But yeah, that's where we're at. So that's it for me.
Okay. So there's not many low points. So you can tell when we're scraping just to find something.
Right.
Nitpicking. So Confusing Hallways out of 10 for me. I really enjoy this movie. I even suggested it to my parents just because it's not really horror. It is horror, but it's not like the horror they wouldn't appreciate because it's very subtle, it's nuanced, and it is, quote, elevated.
Yeah. Dare I say elevated.
And not, scary in the like sense that you would think of a horror movie. Like it's a psychological horror. For that reason, like I said, I do really enjoy this. Probably 8.5 Confusing Hallways out of 10. How about you?
Yeah, this movie I think gets a solid 8. I think it's really well done. It's something that you can watch multiple times. I mean, I have watched it multiple times, and it was just as interesting, the other time. Again, this movie does not overstay its welcome. It is another hour and a half long movie. It gets it done, and even though it has a weird ambiguous ending and it kind of like expounds on a lot of weird shit, it really doesn't go crazy over the top on time, which is surprising. Most of these kind of movies do. So yeah, it's a fun movie. It's worth rewatching.
Oh, for sure.
And we'll see the daughter next week.
We will.
Yeah, she's in Neon Demon.
Ah, there we go.
Spoiler, I guess.
I can't watch it. It's
Well,
ruined.
no,
Ruined.
her being in it is not a spoiler. The spoiler is that that's what we're doing next week.
Yeah. All right. So last up, Barbarian from 2022.
Yes. Now, this movie, I'm just gonna say it's a great movie. I like this movie a lot. It's got a lot of weird shit going on. It's almost like 3 movies mixed together.
Oh,
and then
is.
2 of the, well, I guess all 3 of them kind of tie up in the end. But like one kind of just sort of like barely skips by, but there's the 2 of them are like, very much crossed up there. So basically it starts off as a young lady goes to, it's like very late at night, pitch black, right?
Yep.
Goes to a Airbnb in a suburb of Detroit. She goes to the Airbnb. She opens up the key box outside. It's empty. She's like, shit, I can't get in. She tries to call the contact number, no answer. Like, shit, what do I do? So she like goes back in her car. Of course, it's raining. So she goes back in her car, and then she sees a light come on inside. So she goes and like starts ringing the doorbell, and like some guy answers. Some guy being, Bill Skarsgård.
He's the villain because he's Bill Skarsgård.
Right. And he answers, and he's like, yeah. What are you doing? And she's like, well, this is my Airbnb. Like, I rented this place. Like, what are you doing here? He's like, oh, well, I rented this place through, I don't know, Home Away. I guess that's another app. I never heard of it.
Sure.
Yeah, I've never used either one, but yeah, well, they're apps that give you rentals. And he's like, oh, I don't know. And so they like show each other their, reservations, and they're both correct. It just looks like, somebody crossed their, lines, and they never turned off the availability on one when they rented it from the other, whatever.
Right.
So she's like, okay, whatever. And he's like, well, it's raining outside. This is a not great neighborhood. You probably shouldn't be sitting out in your car with the dome light on. Why don't you come in, behind a locked door and, try to find a hotel or something. That's fine. So she's calling around trying to find a hotel room. Of course, there's a big medical convention in town. All the hotel rooms in all of Detroit are booked.
Every single one.
Right. So she's like, crap. She's like, at this point, she's like, well, maybe I'll sleep in my car or something. He's like, all right, well, here's what we're gonna do. You can take the room because I'm chivalrous. Whatever. You can take the bed. I'll sleep here out on the couch. We'll both get our money back in the morning because this lady's not calling us back.
Right.
We'll both get our money back because they screwed up the bookings. We'll just deal with it for tonight because we both, have shit to do tomorrow. We need a place to sleep, so let's just do that. They go, okay, but she's got to think about clean sheets, and since he had already like laid down in the bed, she's got to clean the sheets before she goes to bed. So,
and he played Duvet Monster.
Right. But essentially, what happens is because they have the time to wash the sheets, they kind of get to know each other. They find out they have a lot in common. Like she's going to be a documentary like researcher about art collectives in the city, and he just happens to be one of the founding members of one of these art collectives. And so they, they start talking and they get along. They have similar tastes in movies, music, blah blah blah, whatever. It seems like things are going in a nice direction, right? They're getting along. She goes to sleep. She goes in the room, closes the door, lays down. He lays on the couch. She wakes up later on, at night. She hears like a weird noise. She looks up and her door is open. And she's like, okay, that's weird. And she hears, Bill Skarsgård, like we're doing like night terrors. It sounds like he's like,
now, it's something you should warn people.
All right. Well, maybe he didn't know. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, so he's like, they're like, oh, she's like, this is weird. So she goes out there and she's like, tries to like wake him up, and she has to like shake him a little bit to wake him up. And he goes like, what the fuck? Why are you touching me? So that's like a weird thing, right? And she's like, did you open my door? And he's like, no. Why would I open your door? And she's like, well, I don't know. It's open. Like what's going on? And she's like, I don't know. You were like doing moaning or something. I don't know. Whatever. I'm going to bed. So she runs back in the room, locks the door, goes to bed, wakes up. Just fine. The next morning, she wakes up. He's already gone. He leaves a note that he had to go do stuff. He said we'll reconnect when we're done with our stuff for the day. She goes to her job interview. He goes off doing whatever. She comes back from the job interview, and she oh yeah, I was gonna say what happened. Oh, she runs out of toilet paper.
Yeah.
And she's looking all around the house for toilet paper. She can't find any. And then she looks down in the basement and she sees a case of toilet paper down there. So she goes down there, and the door closes behind her and it locks. So she's stuck in the basement. So she has toilet paper, but she can't get out. So she's like trying to figure out a way to get out. She can't really find a way out. But what she does find is looking around, she finds basically a rope in a hole in the wall. And she pulls on the rope and it opens up a secret door in the wall.
As it does.
And then she looks in and it's like a very dark, very like earthen hewn like hallway. This is not like, it looks like somebody dug this out. And it's like, okay, this is weird. So she kind of walks down there because she sees a doorknob. So she's like, oh, okay, maybe it's like a weird back door. So she goes down there to look, opens up the door, and it's a nightmare room. Right, it's like a sealed room with an old school camcorder on a tripod, with a iron frame bed and a like blood stained fucking mattress on it. And then as the piece de resistance of the room is, there's a bloody handprint on the wall
and a shit bucket.
Yeah. And she's like, yeah, nope. So she gets the fuck out of there. And then she like waits by the basement window. So the guy comes back, Skarsgård comes back. She bangs on the window, because she has the key. So like the lock spot, you can't even get into the lock box. Yeah. And her phone was up on the table upstairs. So anyway, she bangs on the window. He sees her. I guess we should also stress, when she gets back to the house, there was a dude that chased her. Like a homeless dude that chased her into the house and telling her to get out of the house.
Get out the house.
Yeah, get out the house. Get out that house. Whatever. That's why she runs in immediately. So, and then, that's why she doesn't bother putting the key back and all that kind of stuff, because she was like scared into the room. Anyway, so she gives the key back to him. He opens up the door. She comes in and she's like, all right, we got to get the fuck out of here right now.
Right.
And he's like, what are you talking about? Like, what's going on? And she's like, we got to get out of here. There's a weird, creepy, secret murder room in the basement. We got to get the fuck out of here. And he's like, all right, okay. He's like not quite getting it because he hasn't seen it, right? So he's like,
how about, I got to see this.
Yeah, he's like, all right, give me 30 seconds to see this thing so that I can be in your same mind space, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do. So he goes down there, right? And then she's like waiting. She doesn't hear anything. And I'm like, I guess against her better judgment, she like puts a chair up next to the door to make sure the basement door doesn't close. She goes down there. She sees the secret door has been opened. She goes down there. He's not in that little room. And she's like, where the hell could he be? And then she realizes that the end of the hallway is also another hidden door. And she opens that up, and it's like a pitch black staircase into blackness. So she screams his name, and he actually, like, she could hear him respond saying, help me, but he's like really far away.
Right.
So she's like, even though she's like panicked, you can tell by the way she's like barely stumbling down the stairs, like she is terrified, but she's like trying to help this guy who she like, seems to be getting along with, right? So she's moving down. She sees, of course, a room full of like, cages with dog dishes and blood all over the place. There's like, just weird hidden hallway rooms that go everywhere. She passes a weird room that looks like a big cuddle room, right? There's like weird blankets all over the floor, and there's a TV that's playing like how to breastfeed your baby videos.
Let's just call it a nest.
Yeah, a nest. Okay, a nest with a weird breastfeeding video in it. So she's like, okay, this is weird. And then goes down a little bit more, and then the dude actually pops out, and he's like, you can see it in his eyes. He is fucking terrified. And he's like, something is down here. Something bit me. We got to get the fuck out of here. And she's like, okay, well, let's go back this way. This is the way out. He's like, no, that's where the thing was that it bit me. And so he's like, we got to go this way. And she's like, no, the way out is this way. And they're like screaming at each other. And then this big monster woman, I guess, you can't really see it, grabs him by the head, smashes him against the wall and kills him. And then grabs her. Hard cut.
End of movie A.
Yeah, end of plot line and movie A. We go straight into movie B, where Justin Long is driving along in a convertible in California.
Yep.
Where he gets called by his agent and his lawyer, and he finds out that, he thinks his life is all sunshine and rainbows because he just got this new pilot. He's an actor. He just got this new pilot. It's a big pilot that the network is going to pick up, and he's got a big payday coming. He's going to be rich and famous, blah, blah. He's super happy, right? Singing along to songs on the radio and shit. Basically, the agent and a lawyer tell him that he is being pursued legally because of a rape allegation, right?
Yeah.
So this is his co-star on the pilot. So number one, you're fired. Right? Even if this pilot does go through, you will not be in it. Two, you're probably going to be arrested for this. And, oh, by the way, there's a big expose article coming out tomorrow about this whole thing.
Right.
So you're essentially out. Like you went from hero to zero immediately.
Yes, he got Me Too'd really fast.
Right. Yeah. So he basically goes to his money guy, what can I do? And the money guy goes, well, I mean, you got this huge mansion here. You got to get rid of that. And he's like, oh, I have some property up in Michigan. What can I do with that? He's like, well, you can sell it, but you're not going to get a whole lot. And he's like, okay, well, see what I can do. So he flies to Michigan to go get, I don't know why, but he goes to find this stuff himself so that he can, I guess, try to sell it. And of course, one of the properties is the house that we were just being witness of at the Airbnb debacle. So he gets the keys, he goes to the house, and he immediately sees that everybody's shit's still there. This is a couple of weeks later.
Right.
All their suitcases are still there. Their stuff is in the bathroom, toothbrushes and everything are there. And he's calling the lady, hey, all this stuff is here. What, doesn't anybody come to clean this stuff up? And they're like, no.
That said, only if once someone books it, then they go in there.
Yeah, and clean it before they get there, which, okay, right. That seems bizarre to me, but whatever.
No, he questions it too.
Yeah, I was like, whatever. I mean, whatever works for you. I don't know. So he's basically then measuring the place to try to figure out how much square footage it has, how much he can try to sell this house for, right? He goes down and also finds the secret room. He finds the rope, the hole in the wall, pulls on the rope, finds the room down there. Instead of being horrified by this room, he goes, sweet, more square footage. So he starts. He just casually pushes the bloodstained bed out of the way to measure the room and stuff. And then he finds the other hidden door with the big staircase, and he's like, "Oh, sweet, even more square footage." So he's measuring down and
down the stairs.
Finds the human cages and the weird nest room, and he's like, "Oh, that's cool." More square footage. He's like, "This place just goes on forever." He's not registering what's going on.
Right.
And then all of a sudden his tape measure disconnects and starts flying away. And now he starts getting a little nervous. Right? Now he's like, what the fuck? So then he basically gets chased by the big mother, who then chases him into a hole in the ground with a cage on top. I don't know, whatever. It's too dark. You can't really see what the fuck is going on.
We'll call it the playpen.
Right, yeah, with the playpen. So he's down there and then basically sees the other girl, who is from movie 1, is a prisoner and has been down there for a while because she's looking pretty rough. And so the mom, I guess we'll just call her the mother, comes back and tries to get him to drink this disgusting bottle looking thing. He won't do it, so she gets mad and pulls him out. Kind of switches to her viewpoint now. She leaves the cage open, so she's able to jump out. She has his flashlight. So she basically makes her way out. She sees that the mother is trying to force him to breastfeed.
Yeah.
Because she's in the nest room watching the the Baby and Me video, trying to do that. She tries to escape, or she does escape. She gets all the way
Yes.
outside.
He breaks the window and gets out because
Yeah.
the door is still locked in the basement.
Right. And then,
It's
yes.
closed.
Right. And then it's like still daytime out, and the mother won't come out when it's daytime, apparently. So she meets up with the homeless guy that chased her earlier. He basically tells her that, yeah, she's been living under there for years. You know, she's not even the worst thing down there. You should not go back in there. And she's like, well, somebody's in there that needs help. The guy's down there. He needs help. So she like walks to a gas station to call the police. The police get there, like immediately don't give a shit and immediately don't care. They dismiss her whole story. They go to the house and they're like, oh, the door is locked. We can't, you know, she's like, well, just kick it down. You know, she's like, oh, the only crime here is you broke this window. You know, whatever. We got shots fired. We're leaving.
Yep.
So they just leave. And she's like, okay, well, what the hell do I, you know, what do I do? You know, so she basically figures out that she's not going to get any help at all. And essentially at this point, she goes to leave. And of course, it's like right when night is falling. So the mother jumps out at her. And then she hits her with the car and pins her against the house. And then goes back to, oh no, I think she just goes, she just goes in the house at that point because she knows that she hit her with the car. So she's not down there.
Right.
So she goes down to try to find him. We cut back to him. He was managed to get away from the nest while mother was chasing her out the window. So he manages to find another room down there, and the mother is terrified of this room. And she like, as soon as he gets close to this door, she like backs away. And he gets in the room, and basically finds like a, I don't know, like a weird kind of like bunker with like all kinds of cans and bottles and shit all over the floor. And he basically sees that an old man is living down there.
Very old man.
Very old man. Hard cut. now we're in movie 3, which goes back in time to the 1980s.
Reaganomics.
Yeah, during the Reagan era. It's Richard Brake, our good friend from last week.
Mm-hmm.
He is essentially living in the suburbs of Detroit when it was a hopping city, right? When it was like the pinnacle of, you know, a great place to live and work and raise a family, right? So he is essentially, we find out he's just like a serial killer. We see him like stalking a woman and, you know, pretending to be a Department of Water and Power guy to like make sure that her windows are unlocked so he can come back and get her later. But he also goes to the grocery store and buys like a whole bunch of plastic sheeting. And then like he's a diaper, and he buy a bunch of diapers and baby shit. And then he buys the video that we see them watching later on down in the nest. So we basically find out that, okay, 1, he's a serial killer. 2, he's kidnapping women and keeping them down in this basement. And 3, he's apparently having children with them. And he's
children of children.
Yeah. So that is the movie 3. He has a conversation with his neighbor, basically saying that they're going to leave because they think things are starting to get worse, which again, they were. Good call. But he says, I'm not going anywhere.
I'm never leaving.
So that's kind of that. So we basically hard cut back to Justin Long, who finds all these like VHS videos in this room. He puts one in that's called like Gas Station Redhead. They're all named like, you know, stuff like Puker, you know, woman from grocery store. You know, it's like all these like weird names that like a serial killer would name something.
Like Poughkeepsie tapes.
Right, yeah, exactly. Like some bizarre fucking weird name. But anyway, he puts in the tape, you hear like horrible murder sounds.
And then see it.
Yeah, you don't see it. And he looks back like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And then he basically pulls a gun out of a like a drawer. And then Justin's like, oh shit, like don't kill me. And then he just shoots himself.
Yeah, because he was told that cops are on their way here right now.
Right. Yeah, because Justin Long was like trying to make him feel better by saying the cops are coming because he thinks he's a victim of the mother as well.
Right. Then you find out that, oh, he's a serial killer and he doesn't want the cops to get him.
Right. Yeah.
So he kills himself.
Right. So yeah, he basically takes the gun from the guy and then makes his way, you know, out of the tunnels. And as he's making his way out of the tunnels, you know, basically we cut back to The girl, Tess, trying to get back in the tunnels to find him, to get him out. She sees a light down at the tunnel and she's like, hello, bang, gets shot by Justin Long, who then goes, oh shit, and then helps her out, whatever. They get outside of the house. They meet up with the homeless guy because they didn't have anywhere else to go. Like her car won't work. He doesn't have the keys to his car, so they can't do that. So she's like, well, we have to run, but it's nighttime. So let's go to where the water tower is, because that's where the homeless guy said that he is, and she doesn't go there. So they go meet up with the water tower guy. He gives them some exposition, basically saying like, yeah, they know that guy lives down there. They know that, he was breeding women, making copies of copies. Basically women are having babies. He's having babies with the babies, weird, crazy stuff happening down there. And they apparently knew about it because he was there for 15 years and he knew about it the whole time. But he says she only comes out at night, but she doesn't come to this water tower.
I've been here 15 years and she's never come here.
Yeah, and then of course she comes right out of the wall and kills him immediately, tears off his arm, and then beats him to death with it.
Yep.
And then of course Justin Long panics and runs, and Tess kind of comes, tries to follow him, but obviously she's injured, she's moving slow. He gets to the top, he fumbles the gun and drops it. So he basically like, shit, there's nowhere I can go, there's nothing I can do. So like she gets up there, the mother gets up there, and he basically pushes Tess off of the water tower going, oh, go get your baby.
Yep.
And so the mother jumps off the water tower to catch Tess, kind of like shifts her body so that she lands first and then Tess lands on top of her. He goes down to see if they're okay. He sees that Tess is alive and he's like, oh, good. You're okay. That's what I planned all along. Blah, blah, whatever. So find out mother's still alive. Mother grabs him, squishes his eyes out and kills him.
Rips his face open.
Yeah, rips his face open. And then Tess has to shoot her because she's treating her like a baby and she wants her to go back in the house.
Yep.
Which she doesn't obviously want to do. So she ends up shooting the mother. And then that's the end of it.
Yes. I know we both watched this when it essentially came out.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't right when it came out, but it was one of those movies that I definitely wanted to watch before our wrap up for 2022.
Yeah, I mean, what were your first thoughts on it?
I mean, I loved it. It's bizarre. It's again, it's like you get these weird hard cuts to where, again, you think you know where this movie's going, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Bill Skarsgård is there. He's acting kind of creepy, a little too charming. It's like, oh, this is, he's gonna be the guy that kills him, right?
Yep.
Nope. I mean, they don't. I'm pretty sure they did it on purpose. We talked about this earlier. Like he was like fresh off of It. He was like at that time he was like the go-to kind of villain, creepy guy. And I think they purposely made him the opposite of that in this movie, just to kind of like shake your head a little bit.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's great. I mean, yeah, that there's like again like 3 completely different stories, but I think they overlap pretty well. They kind of fade back into each other here and there. They, the one just was basically there to give you some backstory. But it's great. And it's like we were saying, Richard Brake is in it. He doesn't really say anything evil or bad. He's just his presence is just so creepy in the movie. Like he really sells that he's just like a horrible, horrible person.
Oh yeah.
But I think that's what Richard Brake is great at. So.
Right. Yeah. And for me, this is, I mean, it's a fantastic movie. I love this movie. I've watched it multiple times since it's come out now. I enjoy it every single time. And the first thought was, you're like, holy shit, it's Bill Skarsgård. He's the bad guy. No, he's dead. His head's bashed in. And I know we generally shit on plot movie A, B, and C a lot, but this does it well. Yeah,
I'm not against that format. I'm really not. It just a lot of times it just doesn't make any fucking sense. Like there's nonsensical reasons for having multiple plot lines. This one, at least they complement each other and at least explain things.
Right. Yeah. I'll do my highlights first. Yeah, we said Richard Brake, right? Fantastic. He just oozes serial killer in this movie just perfectly. like the way they shot him from the side or from the back or from the fisheye. Like you're immediately unnerved with him, because if you know horror movies, you know him and generally the characters he plays. So the expectations of seeing him were 100% correct. What you thought of Bill Skarsgård was not correct, and that was a great subversion of expectations. I do like that. She goes there at night, and she really can't see how bad the neighborhood is until she, the next morning, like, holy shit, I was out in here.
Yeah, it's like one of those like, wow, do not stop kind of neighborhoods.
Yeah. I thought the creature effects were great. I thought that they did the basement, the fruit cellar, perfect. Like, you're just going with them, like, what the fuck?
Right.
And she's goes down there the first time. Nope.
Right.
Correct, madam. I think the story was great. I said the facts were great, and you really, saw how much of an asshole Justin Long character really is, because he has that little speech like, I don't know if I'm a bad person. I might be a bad person, or maybe I'm just a good person that's done one bad thing, and then he proceeds to do another bad thing like immediately after. But obviously Tess didn't know that. She just saw another human being.
Right.
And I think that shows her character, like, she was willing to go back every single time to try to save someone.
Right. Yeah. Like, no matter how scared she was, she still understood that somebody might need help.
Right. I like that we didn't see the videotape that Richard Rack had in his room. We hear the sound effects and like his horrified expression, like, and it's just like, fill in the blanks yourself.
Right. Yeah. He turns back at him and he's like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, so you can tell it's bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I said in the atmosphere, being potentially in the Saw universe, being in Detroit.
Right.
And I like that. This is another, the guy who created this does comedies. He's been in comedy TV shows and comedy improv sketch groups and stuff like that. And just another example of a comedian or more comedic person doing a horror movie and doing it really well.
Yeah, for sure.
Those are my highlights. How about you?
Okay. Detroit. I am fascinated by Detroit. I really am. It's so strange and so, like, I guess kind of interesting that like a bustling metropolis just kind of like collapsed like almost overnight. And it's just like all of these like things that normally feed into a metropolis, right? Because you have all these like, middle class people that want to have a house with a yard to raise their family in and shit, right? But they also want to work in the city. So that's what the suburbs are, right? That the suburbs are there for people to live there and then, go into the city, but still have their space to raise a family. And it's like, once the metropolis collapses, like all of those suburbs just disappear. They just evaporate. Yes. And it's fascinating to me how it just like falls apart, man. It's like urban decay is just like, it's fucking gone. Like, you go there and this shit has only been abandoned for like, what, 30 years?
Yeah.
And it's like, it looks like a fucking wasteland. It looks like a post-apocalyptic world, like all the houses are falling apart. They're like all spray painted and like half of them have been like burned and boarded up and shit. Like, it looks like a ghost town. And it's like, this is a suburb of Detroit, a major city. It's just fascinating to me. That kind of thing. I mean, a lot of horror movies take place there because it really is a place that, it works, right?
Yeah.
It works as a creepy place to be. I mean, we just had It Follows was in Detroit, the same kind of thing. I mean, Don't Breathe is in Detroit. It's like the one house that somebody still lives in on a block of empty, burned out houses and stuff. It's like, it's fascinating to me. Anyway, and this kind of just sells it. I mean, that's the whole, like, Detroit is actually like a character in.
Yeah.
And like you said, yes, Skarsgård and Brake were great. I said, you really think that Skarsgård is going to be the bad guy. As soon as you hear like, he's like, help me, like down in there, I was like, oh, she's going to be dead. The first time I watched this, I was like, yeah, she's going to get murdered down there. But no, and it's like it totally spins it around on you, which is it's great. The twists, again, like the twists, hard stop new movie, it does that twice. There's like essentially 3 little mini movies in here, which is awesome. But just great how it does it. It does it at the perfect time, you
Right.
know, to like explain how this other person eventually gets there, which is fun. And again, like Justin Long, you don't really see him as a bad guy in many movies.
It's hard to see him as a bad guy.
Yeah, he's usually like the kind of dopey, like, everyman or like unlucky, kind of dude, right? He's always kind of like the nerdy dude, like
Right.
that's the role that he plays. And in this movie, he's like a fucking just an asshole. I mean, and you find out like in the beginning, like, oh yeah, he gets Me Too'd or whatever, right? And you're like, oh, I wonder if it happened. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. And like there's 2 conversations that happen. Like one is where he's talking to his friend at the bar. Um, and the other one is at the end when he's talking to Tess, like trying to justify in his head what he did and that, oh, it was the right thing to do, so it must have been me doing a good thing. You can see the wheels spinning in his head trying to spin it so that he didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
Which is, again, you basically understand that, oh no, he totally did rape that poor girl, like he totally did. Like this is him doing what he always does, doing things and then trying to justify them later, so like, yeah, at first we don't know if he did it, and I guess we don't know for 100%, but you can see what the kind of person he is. It's a very high chance that he did. Pretty much guaranteed that he did. And again, you don't get to see Justin Long in a bad character. It usually doesn't happen that often, and it's interesting to see. And I mean, I think he is better than what they usually pigeonhole him into. But he very rarely gets a chance to show that.
Well, unless we're talking about It's a Wonderful Knife, and we don't need to see it.
No thanks. And I thought the FX were great in this. Yeah, I mean the woman suit, I mean worn by a dude, but yeah, I mean she's terrifying looking. So
yeah,
mission accomplished.
Yeah. Do you want to roll into your low points then?
Sure. How about if you find a secret hidden room in the basement, don't go in there. You probably should never go in there. Like, what the fuck is going on? The other thing is a secret room that's been down there for 40 years. They kind of tried to say,
plus.
right? Yeah. Like 2 different people were in that basement, and both of them found it within like 5 minutes. Like, what kind of secret room gets found by people immediately? Like, how did it not get found before this point? And then the water tower guy, I understand he's basically there just to like, give you some exposition, of like, oh yeah, this is what's going on. Like this is, she's bad. There's worse things down there. Oh yeah, he's been having babies with babies for 40 years. That's essentially his whole purpose. It's just odd. I mean, that's his only purpose being there is to just give you information and then die immediately.
Right.
But that's it. What do you got?
The timeline, it doesn't really fit in this movie because they're essentially saying that the mother is 40 years old, but he's been making copies of a copy, and the dude can't be that old, and that means, I mean, I guess he'd be like, probably 90 or 100 at this point in time. But, where's the previous mothers? Do they die? What's going on here? Because it doesn't seem, time frame wise, doesn't seem for him to fit up for her to be there for 40 years.
Right. Well, here's what it is. I think that they took the idea of like, what if a guy like kept procreating with his own children over and over and over again, and they became like so inbred that they had turned into monsters, right? They took that concept, but then like took the end result and applied it to the beginning.
Right.
Like, yeah, the monsters that would end up after, a couple of generations, they were like, yeah, what if that happened immediately? And that's just what they did.
Right.
So yeah, no, I can see
that. The as we discussed earlier, the magic measuring tape. Justin Long has the best measuring tape I've ever seen in the entire world, where he literally just holds on to everything perfectly. Like, you're not going to be able to hook it to a stair, go down the stairs and go like 30 feet down the hallway and while moving it. It's going to come undone easily.
Yeah, very much so.
And yeah, like, I understand they're trying to convey his ignorance and greed. But yeah, he's like, oh, bonus rooms.
Yeah, it's like he does not understand like what this means at all. He's just seeing dollar signs.
Right. And I'm not sure how feasible this one house being bought and turned into an Airbnb. You know what I mean? I've gone through Airbnb, and I'm going to say this for what I do. I looked at the street view of the address before going to it. Maybe that's just me.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, some people don't, man. Again, they're gonna remain nameless, but I've talked to people that have done shit like that. So where there's, oh yeah, I booked an Airbnb and we went there and it was a really, really bad neighborhood. Like, what? Like, they were in a completely different city that they had never been to before, and they were just looking for cheap Airbnbs. So of course, the cheap Airbnbs come up in like extremely bad neighborhoods, and like that's what they rented. It's like, what is wrong with you? Like, what? Don't you look at anything ahead of time? So yeah, I'll remain nameless, but yeah, there are people that do that.
I don't get it. I've used it multiple times for different places. I just look around the neighboring area.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it I got for low points. How many confusing hallways out of 10 do you give this?
I really, really like this movie. I will give it a solid 9.
Solid 9?
Confusing hallways out of 10.
Oh yeah, I think this is. I'm going 9.5 because I really enjoy this movie. It is like such a twisty, expectations averted type movie that you would never expect from someone being their first horror movie that came from a comedic background. So it kind of just goes back to what we talked about, like the timing of things. It seems to translate well from comedy into the horror world overall.
Right. Yeah. I don't. Yeah. Maybe, or maybe it's the whole thing. Like, comedians can see things the way they really are. Maybe that translates well to being able to scare people because you see things for what they really are, so you know what people are scared of. Maybe that's what it is.
Right. Maybe. But I mean, overall, a pretty solid week. I said I could have done without the kids screaming, but everything else I was great with.
Yeah. Very much so.
So do you feel more elevated?
Oh, it's for sure. I'm going to elevate everything. I'm going to have elevated toast for breakfast.
Just be careful. If you put jelly on it, the jelly falls face down.
Yeah.
The devil's there.
Dear God.
I think some people think that's elevated horror. I'm not going to lie. I think some people think that.
Some people, I've heard people say it's a good movie, and I don't understand it. I can't get it. It is a good movie until that point, and it's just so ridiculous.
Right.
I don't know. If you want to hear me rant about it, find the earlier episode where I rant about it.
Yes. All right. Anything else to add?
That's it.
All right. So they're too sexy for the runway. Too scary for the runway. So scary it hurts. So join us next time as we dive into the fashion world and see if looks can kill with Neon Demon, Last Night in Soho, and Black Swan. I have only seen 2 of these movies.
I've seen all of them.
So I'm excited. From the 2 I've seen, fantastic movies. And from what you've said, Neon Demon is good too. So I'm excited to see how it goes.
Okay. Don't quote me on saying it's good. There are things I definitely like about it. I will tell you to do this because this is the part that I will say many times that it is a great beginning to a movie. Watch from the very beginning. We're talking opening credits all the way to the end of the bar/party scene, which is probably about 15 minutes ish.
Okay.
That to me is a fantastic beginning. The rest of the movie, it's in and out. I mean, there's a lot of interesting things, but a lot of it, we'll talk about it next week. But I'd say focus on that part, like from the very beginning, opening credits to the end of the bar/party scene. That we'll discuss that. That's the part that I really like.
All right. Well, remember, we watch bad movies, so you don't have to. And this has been Graveyard saying, have you checked on the children?
This is Salem saying, long live the new flesh.
Good night.
Good night.